Running on Air by 11ty7. Chapter 3. Within seconds of pouring the memory into the signed pensieve, Harry disappears into its depth. A room constructs itself, lightning quick around him, the memory quickly taking form. Half-hide walnut paneling, a rich leather chaise, solemn-faced portraits in gilded frames, a marble fireplace, a room in Malfoy Manor, Harry would wager. Narcissa stands by the fireplace, the flames casting patterns of light and shadow over her face. "You are unhappy," she says slowly. Harry turns around. Malfoy is behind him, he realizes, standing and facing away from his mother, seemingly studying a family portrait on the wall. He's neatly dressed as ever, but he wears no robes or cloak. It gives him a strangely vulnerable look. Malfoy doesn't reply to his mother. Keeps staring at the family portrait. It consists of a far younger Narcissa and Lucius, Harry sees, standing each side of their son. Malfoy looks about 10 or 11, and even when Malfoy speaks next, he confirms Harry's estimate. "This portrait was painted the day before I left for Hogwarts." "Did you hear me, Draco? I'm asking if you are happy," Narcissa says. Malfoy once more doesn't respond. He keeps staring at the portrait, eyes locked on his younger self. Lucius and Narcissa look proud, Harry thinks, and so much more complete. The toll of the war was indeed high. Narcissa watches her son with a frown on her face. "Draco, I heard you." Narcissa raises a hand to her necklace. It's a habit she has, Harry thinks, when she's anxious or displeased. "You are not wearing your wedding ring," Narcissa observes, and Harry glances at Malfoy's hand. Narcissa doesn't miss a thing, he thinks wryly. "I never do," Malfoy says, not turning his gaze from the portrait. Several expressions shift over Narcissa's face, difficult to observe in the flickering firelight. She drops her hand from the necklace and changes topics. "Well, seeing as you're so interested in portraits, you'll be sitting for your next one in a few months. I thought the conservatory would make a nice backdrop." Malfoy nods. Narcissa presses on. "And perhaps a quote carved into the frame? You'll have to give it some careful thought. Your father selected a Seneca quote about power, if I recall correctly. Perhaps you'll choose something similar?" "I've got something in my mind," Malfoy says. "Yes?" Narcissa tilts her head expectantly. "Tell me. I'll be sure to tell the framer." "We cannot accept," Malfoy says, "what we do not choose." Narcissa is silent. Malfoy crosses the room in a short number of strides and leaves, his footsteps fading down the hallway, and the memory dissolves to nothing. Harry's not sure what he should make of it. The Wandsworth Warriors win the Margate match. Ginny arrives at the apartment just after 5 o'clock in the evening. Harry standing on the balcony, staring out over the Thames, watching the trains. Thoughts suddenly shimmer, wavering across his view, and next moment Ginny has tumbled into the middle of the kitchen, a portkey clutched in one hand. Her cheeks are flushed, her eyes bright with victory. She kisses him before rushing away. The team captain has organized a celebratory dinner for the team. "I'll skip the drinks afterwards and just come home," Ginny promises as she changes into a set of casual robes. "Don't be daft. Go and have fun," Harry says, and Ginny smiles as she kisses him again in farewell, rushing out the door. A moment later, there's a brief pop as she disapparates. Harry goes out to the balcony again. The sun is setting over London, silhouetting the buildings starkly against the pale blue sky. It's the last day of summer. If he listens carefully, he's certain he can hear someone whistling again, sending the notes into the gentle August sky. blow the wind southerly, southerly, southerly. Harry wakes early on Monday and leaves Ginny sleeping. She's used to his early starts. Sometimes he thinks it's like there's only one of them living in the apartment. The morning sunlight slants across the white walls. Puts the kettle on, gets a mug out of the cupboard, measures a spoonful of sugar. Every noise seems amplified in the quiet apartment. Every footsteps echoes on the floorboards. He can hear every breath he takes. Inhale, exhale. The sliding door to the balcony is clean, all fingerprints scorchified away. The glass is clear as air. The view beyond it could belong in any real estate magazine. Maybe nobody's living here at all. At the ministry, he passes by the Auror's office, listening to them laugh and joke about some potion incident. Ron hasn't arrived yet, Harry thinks. It's a running joke that he always sleeps in. The investigative division offices are far more quiet. Harry unlocks the door to his office and steps inside. Unlike the pristine apartment, his office is a comfortable clutter of mismatched furniture and piles of paperwork. There's the battered desk with his chair behind it. In the corner of the office are 2 comfortable chairs and a low table with an inviting bowl of sweets. It's been deliberately designed to be as soothing as possible as the designated corner for interviewing often distraught relatives. The walls are lined with colorful pictures, bright crayon drawings sent in by families grateful for news of long-lost spouses and parents, and framed pictures of the Chudley Cannons on one wall, a joke gift from Ron. Harry, aware that many friends and family of missing people will sit in the office and look around it, has made a concerted effort to hide anything upsetting. Unlike the Auror offices, often with enlarged mugshots on the wall, or mind maps that track motives and suspects, Harry is far more discreet with his file information. It was one of the first things Holdsworth taught him about being in the investigative division. In keeping with these principles, Malfoy's case isn't visible. The file is locked in Harry's desk drawer. The Pensieve is locked in the cabinet behind the desk. The Pensieve? He unlocks the cabinet and stares into the silvery depth of the Pensieve, frowning. He watches the memory with Narcissa again, looking for the most insignificant detail. The way Malfoy pauses before speaking. The way he stares at the family portrait in the same way Harry stares at photographs of his parents and thinks it's the closest he'll ever get to them. But everything feels so cryptic. Everything Malfoy says seems to have 1,000 different meanings, depending on how Harry chooses to interpret the tone of his voice, or the slightest tilt of his head, or the faintest pause before he speaks. "We can't accept what we do not choose," could refer to Malfoy feeling resentful of the way his family naturally led him into the dark arts, or the way Voldemort forced his hand, or it could have nothing to do with the war at all. Maybe it's his marriage, Harry thinks critically. Maybe Astoria wanted a divorce and Malfoy didn't, but either way he'd end up having to concede. It would explain the absence of Malfoy's wedding ring. But then Malfoy said he never wore the ring, and what was that supposed to mean? He simply doesn't like jewelry, or perhaps found the ring too bothersome, always losing it or something. Or some deeper meaning Harry's failed to grasp. Everything seems to lead in circles. Circles? Well, he's got one concrete bit of information. Caught in an unusually capricious mood, Harry smiles wryly and reaches for the file, drawing up a fresh page and writing likes circles. He pauses, then adds, "in inceptor finis est." He uses a sticking charm to attach the photograph of Malfoy to the page. He looks at it for a long time, waiting for a scowl or rude gesture, but Malfoy just gazes at some point past Harry, clearly locked in deep thought.
Where are you?
Harry mutters, staring at the photograph.
Are you even alive?
Malfoy moves at last, touching a hand absently to the silver clasp on his cloak, before his hand falls to his side again, and he resumes gazing at nothing. Harry sighs. He walks slowly up the meandering path to Astoria's door. He'd received an owl over lunchtime, just after he finished reviewing the files and the notes again. The letter had requested he visit, and Harry had jumped at a chance to acquire something new, wasting no time in disapparating to Astoria's home. The first signs of autumn are beginning to chill the lingering touch of summer. Soil is damp with early rain, and as Astoria greets Harry and takes him to the kitchen, he sees the little reminders of autumn. A small woodpile by the hearth, a vase of marigolds, the last of a late summer bloom on the table. The kitchen hearth burns a gentle fire, consisting mostly of glowing coals. The weather is still too warm to justify a roaring blaze. "You spoke to Narcissa," Astoria says as she makes him a cup of tea. She hadn't seemed surprised to see him so soon after sending the owl. Harry takes a seat at the table, moving a bag of seed sachets and a set of gardening shears from the chair.
She told you that?
He frowns, wondering if it matters if the two regularly keep each other updated. "Yes, I received a letter from her." Astoria sets the cup of tea in front of Harry, then moves to sit opposite him. "You must have made quite an impression. Narcissa seems to trust you, and she does not trust readily."
She told me herself that she has little choice. This could be their last chance to find her son.
Astoria regards him for a long moment. He expected her to be formally dressed today, as she had perhaps expected his visit this time, but apparently not. Her hair is brushed into a neat bun, but there the effort ends. She wears a comfortable set of robes, designed for lounging on a sofa with a good book, rather than impressing guests at dinner parties, and wears no jewellery that Harry can see beside her engagement and wedding rings. Wedding rings?
Narcissa allowed access to her memory.
Astoria's eyebrows jump upwards. "Which one?" Harry shakes his head. He doesn't know if Narcissa would want Astoria to know.
It doesn't matter. But in it, Malfoy mentioned he never wears a wedding ring.
Astoria glances down, towards her cup of tea. People look downward when they're upset, Holdsworth once told Harry, while trying to hide emotion. But it's difficult to read Astoria's face, although she twists her lips slightly, as if considering something. "Narcissa was very pleased with my marriage to Draco. She dearly wanted a grandchild, and she liked me. My family's wealthy, of good status and pure blood, but sufficiently distanced from Voldemort. We never got involved with that sort."
"Until you married a Death Eater."
Harry feels obliged to point it out. Astoria gives him a sharp look. "Narcissa and Draco were both acquitted. The past doesn't matter to my parents anyways. They just wanted to see me happy, and they adored Draco. During our courtship, he became my closest friend." Harry smiles to hide his disbelief, but Astoria seems to catch it anyway, and her face tightens. "You don't believe me?"
"Malfoy doesn't have friends, he has allies. Trust me, I..."
"Know him?" Astoria shakes her head. "Like the officer first on the case. He thought he knew Draco too." "Oh, I know the Malfoys," he said. "We'll find whatever overpriced villa your husband is holidaying at and drag him back to home. Like Draco was a spoiled child."
"I'm nothing like that,"
Harry interrupts, annoyed.
"I'm doing my best to find Malfoy."
Astoria grabs her wand. Harry instinctively ducks, reaching for his own wand, and feels slightly embarrassed when Astoria presses her wand to her own head and slowly draws out a silver wisp of memory, holding it in place before she spots a vial full of seeds on the table. She empties the vial carelessly, then refills it with the memory. "There you go," she says. "More memories for your collection. I must ask you not to show anyone else." Harry nods curtly, accepting the vial.
"Thank you for the tea," he says tersely. "And the memory."
"When you watch it," Astoria says, "let me know." Harry nods, feeling strangely apprehensive. When he is back at his office, Harry pours the memory into the Pensieve and wonders whether he should leave it until tomorrow. It's nearing 5 o'clock, and he should be going home soon. But the temptation proves too much, and he enters the Pensieve. And he's not sure what he'd been expecting, but this isn't it. He's hit first with a sense of motion, like flying, but not quite, and he feels nauseous for a moment before the rest of the scene rolls over him like a tide. He's sitting in the back seat of a car. "This is terrifying. You're going to kill me." He looks ahead. Astoria. She's sitting in the front passenger seat, eyes wide. Malfoy's driving. Harry never imagined Malfoy like this. He's dressed in his usual style, neat and formal clothes, but he's not wearing robes, nor cloak. His hands are resting lightly on the steering wheel, warm sunlight slanting across his wrists.
"I assure you,"
Malfoy says, a faint trace of amusement in his voice,
"I passed the test."
"It self-steers though, doesn't it? Draco, tell me you're not steering." Malfoy lifts his hand from the wheel and the car begins to coast to the right. Astoria cries out. Harry laughs before he realizes what he's doing. "Don't do that!" Astoria says as Malfoy takes the wheel again. "Merlin, how do the muggles do it? It's... Watch out for that car."
"You mean the one on the opposite side of the road?"
Malfoy says dryly.
"Did you see how close it was?"
Astoria twists around in her seat, watching the car recede into the distance.
"It's supposed to be close, Astoria. This is a country road, not a 4-lane motorway."
"You're insane."
Astoria glances at Malfoy.
"Why are you doing this anyway? We could buy a car with automatic driving spells, Draco. It's not like we don't have the money for it. My father could find us a very nice Bentley, or the latest self-driving and space-squeezing charms on it."
"What's the point in that?"
Malfoy says. There's a strange edge to his voice that Harry's never heard before.
"Sitting in a box, only going where someone else takes you."
"Watch out for the car in front of us. If they go any slower, you'll hit them,"
Astoria says, still sounding thoroughly unnerved. Malfoy's eyes flick up to the rear vision mirror, and for a moment his eyes seem to meet Harry's. Then he switches the indicator on and overtakes the car, his eyes back on the road.
"I don't think anyone I know has a Muggle driving license,"
Astoria continues.
"And now I understand why."
She laughs, but Malfoy doesn't. He glances at the rear vision mirror again, and once more he seems to be looking at Harry.
"Not at you,"
Harry reminds himself.
"Through you. I wanted to be the first in my family to do something," Malfoy says, "for once."
Harry's eyes fall to Malfoy's wrist. He can see the faint curve of the serpent's tail, beginning of the dark mark. The tail seems to ripple as Malfoy turns and bends in the road, flexing his wrist as he steers. Fields of wheat wash up on each side of the road like a tide of gold. It's high summer, Harry thinks, staring into the cloudless blue sky. For a moment he wonders where Malfoy's driving. Maybe he's going nowhere. Maybe one day he just got into his car and drove and never stopped. He closes his eyes. The sun feels so heavy with warmth, he can almost believe this moment is real. But as Malfoy slows down for another corner, the memory dissolves like a handful of sand tossed into the sky. To be continued.